Hello and welcome to the Heads and Volleys podcast with me, Lee Dunn. So I just returned from the A license in Kansas City, the National Development Center, and while I was there I was able to interview a good friend of mine now. His name is Edison Gonzalez. And I'm really excited to bring his story to you, and I think one of the things I really love about doing this is that I bring a story of somebody that is so humble but so good at what he does. And I think you'll find that where, as Edison talks about his own experience of being a assistant into becoming the head coach or the associate head coach, and what he's learned along the way, I think is super valuable. So really hope you find some joy in this podcast, and hopefully some insight too into perhaps aligning it with your own story if you are perhaps a assistant coach and wondering where the next step is or what's coming your way. And I think Edison will happily share his story with anyone. So I'll give you his social media contact update as well. But for me, if you're following me at LeeDunneSoccer, you'll see all of the stuff I'm going through with the A license. And I just can't recommend that you do that type of license or that type of education. I just can't recommend that you do it enough. It's so valuable. The connections are so good. You get to meet people like Edison and learn about him and pick up from him on his experiences and what he's done. And I mean, the guy's played in Mexico, and you would never know it because he didn't talk about it, but he's just got so much to share and so much fun about the game of soccer, and he just loves what he's doing. So this whole environment fully encompasses this. So without further ado, I'll introduce Edison here and enjoy getting to know him. Eddie, my main man, Edison Gonzalez.
Dunny.
How you doing, mate?
Doing well.
We're in Kansas working through our A license. Glad we got this time we talked about getting you on here, and I'm really glad we've done it.
Yeah, man. When you mentioned it to me, it just kind of built a spark in me, and I was like, you know what? I want to do that. That'd be cool. So getting my cherry popped on a podcast.
And here we are. So I guess, tell me a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Where are you from? What's your background? Kind of where are you coming from? Where are you going?
So again, my name's Edison Gonzalez, Mexican American, born in San Jose, California, Santa Clara to be specific, but grew up in Fresno. My dad's a Mexican immigrant, came to the States when he was like 17, and he played soccer, played semi-pro in New York, and then moved to San Jose, and that's when, family grew. My parents and I have brothers, sisters, and so, but I grew up in Fresno, actually. I went to school at Fresno Pacific University, which was, at the time, at NAIA, and that's kind of where my cultural acknowledgement, right, was, it was broadened, and so I got to meet people from different parts of the world, which was just opened my mind even more, just because I felt like I was so enclosed, and I didn't know what the world really was until that part of my life, and it just opened my eyes to so much more. I played there 4 years, graduated 2010, and with my degree in kinesiology, and then I got to play a little pro ball in Mexico, second division team called Oro, which used to be in the first division, but they got relegated. They sold the rights to the franchise, and then so I got to do that for a year, which was a humbling experience. It was great. Not making much, but the connections and the experience of life in a different country was really good. It was great. Playing the game and learning things about yourself. You're literally on your own, walking 2 miles to get a bus, and then another hour bus ride, and then walking another mile or so to get to training. And so, but yeah, then after I came back to Fresno and I started my coaching career, I did kinesiology, and I knew I wanted to be involved in the game, and yeah, that was one part that I remember about 10 to 15 years ago, that sports science and football was not to where it's at right now, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted to study more, was because I felt like there was a lack in that area. So
So what was your experience of being coached in certain ways and the way you grew up with the game kind of a motivator too? Like kind of how you said, like 10 years ago, it's completely different to how it is now.
Yeah, no. So, for example, my very first coaching gig was at Fresno Pacific. Hiram Ramirez has been there for 20 years, highly decorated coach. He's one of my mentors. And we didn't have a strength conditioning coach. Like, I mean, it was, and I love Hyman, but some of the sessions were the same ones from, 15 years ago, just because of the area of expertise was not there. And so that was one thing that I took to heart. And I had this guy named Oscar, great guy, and that's kind of what motivated me a little bit, is seeing, okay, what's the unknown and how can I use sports science and my background and put them together to be able to make the sport better and give back. And so that was a big driving force with that and coaching. And then I got into more coaching, and I was like, man, I like it, and more and more. And so I've just been geeking out ever since.
So you've coached in different little places. So where are you at now? What are you?
So from there I went to after Fresno Pacific, I coached USL. I was an assistant coach in the USL 2, which was PDL at the time. Fresno Fuego, if you guys know the Fuego fans, it's a pretty historic club there in Fresno. And then I went to University of Pacific for 2 years under Ryan Jordan. Had 2 really great years. Lost to Stanford both in the NCAA tournament, once in PKs, and and one was or not Stanford, and then Duke. Lost to Duke and just last year. But now I'm at Clovis Community College. It's a fairly new program, 4 years old, and so I'm an associate head coach there, and I also teach. So it's teaching part-time, coaching part-time, and so
it's a pretty good gig.
So yeah, it's pretty good. I enjoy it.
So what would you say you've taken from the people that you've worked under? So here on the course we talk about this performance environment, we talk about mentors and leaders and people that you can effectively steal good information from. What are you taking from them that you're now bringing into what you're doing now with your own coaching gig?
Well, I think they say like a good coach is like the best robber or the best stealer.
Plagiarism,
right? And so for me, I call it the cycle of learning. You can never stop learning. I can learn from a teacher, a professor. I can learn from the janitor. I can learn from your own players, from kids, and watching and observing people's interactions. And so I've literally have taken that full circle and just be like, you know what, every day can be an opportunity to learn. And so, and then what I don't like, I mean, there's things that I don't like, and I'm like, oh, I'm not going to use that. I'm not going to steal that, right? Or if there's something that I thought had a negative effect or whatever, I can say, hey, you know what? Now I know what to see. If I start seeing this, maybe I can connect that to maybe I shouldn't do it type thing. And so for me, is using those experiences and watching those interactions that I can at least make my own coaching philosophy, my own curriculum.
Sure, yeah.
And so.
No, I agree with you. I think the more you can do that, the better, the more of an open mind. And again, here in Kansas, I think you come into it with the idea that you're going to try and take as much as you can. And I think there's often times where we forget to leave things away too.
Yeah.
Or we've been talking about self-reflection and how you would sit there and think, that didn't work well.
Yeah.
And instead of just tossing it away, maybe you think a little deeper on it and think, why didn't it work? Was it me? Was it the players? Was it the environment? Was it not the right time? So I think that's the super interesting thing about working with these highly decorated coaches as an assistant. And a lot of people may think that an assistant role is not a glamorous role, but it gets you where you're going.
Yeah, no, and being able to get those opportunities to get that practical experience, because that's one thing where you go somewhere and sometimes you're not able to get that practical experience. But when you get that practical experience and you have that respect and that trust that, hey, you could fail in an environment, and we talk about in the course of having a safe environment so that way you can really let yourself go and learn. I think that's super important. So for me, I've had every place I've been, I've had that. I've had that trust environment, that environment to be able to make mistakes and get feedback, right? Because I think that's a big part part of it, we can't just think, oh, we're all this and that. But part of it is being able to take that feedback and use it positively, and not just be like, put up a wall and then be like, nah, you don't know what you're talking about type thing. And so, and it's not always nice hearing some of those things, but I think it's important.
Yeah.
And it's like someone like you just literally the 2 weeks that we've spent together, the course, I've gotten so much more, to be honest, because I know you're a thinker, and just in my session, it was two minds are better than one, right? And so you got me thinking, oh, what about this, or what about that? Like, if this happens, what will you do? And so for me, I have also put it, and you talk about what are some of those things that have made you better in those experiences, is I try to surround myself with people that are going to push me and make me better. And I use that to catapult myself more and more and more. And so I think that's another part of development, right, is to surround yourself with like-minded people.
I think that I love it, because that is how it needs to be. You need to have this open mind, this embrace of this feedback. I need to feel comfortable enough to ask a question. I need to feel comfortable enough to and trust you enough for you to tell me that you don't think it's very good. And actually, those are the relationships we want, because I want someone to tell me that this is a bad idea before I do it. Like, you learn when you touch hot things, it burns you. You learn real quick, but you'd rather learn by someone actually advising you because of their experience. I think that's the great thing about the coaching education too. So I guess do you have an assistant now? Do you have staff that work under you?
Yeah, so we have a very decorated staff. So I'm an associate head coach. Chad McCarty is the director of the soccer program. And so we work very well together. It's funny because John was Chad's coach in the Olympics.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, so there's that connection.
For those of you listening, our instructor is a gentleman named John Ellinger. So if you've been through the US soccer education or have been privy to part of his course, it's brilliant, and you are probably one phone call away from knowing him anyway if you don't know him. So Eddie, carry on.
So big ups to John. But we have younger coaches, Drew. We have Ivan Mirkovic, which is also on staff with the USL Fresno FC team. And then we have Renato Bustamante, which is still professional right now with Fresno FC, but he's been key on the offensive side. And then we have Bo Diaz, which is a phenomenal goalkeeper trainer, coach. We have an interesting dynamic, and we're able, and I feel like, especially when we talk about that safe environment, we literally have a group chat where we're hashing it out, and it's like, well, why do you think this guy should start? and we're like, all right, tell me why, and then we get into it, and it's never disrespectful or anything, but we've gotten to a culture this season to be really saying things, and because at the end of the day, it's not about us, it's about the program, right? And so all this is always into account that, hey, we're trying to just put our best foot forward. We meet at least one Sunday every month to just review, reflect, and obviously that's a time for us to kind of unwind, and sometimes we don't even talk about football. We can talk about something, one of their kids, and they're playing soccer, and now, things that are going on in life, because I think that's also important too, to be able to build that culture and that safe environment, because there's life outside of football, and so that's another part that's been super important. And another thing we talk about that being able to touch base is some of the sacrifices that we make, and so for me, I know it's like I want to thank my family, and give them a shout out. My parents have instilled some of those great values, and it's so easy for us to forget those people that have supported us. Not that it's because we don't want to, it's just because sometimes we're so focused and into what we're doing that I know you mentioned, like your wife is your number one,
so my assistant
your
coach,
assistant coach, because she's there and she's grown to understand that what we do is much bigger than football. We're injecting and giving a lot to these kids that right now the kids don't know what they don't know, but later on they always oh, I know, I get what you're what you were trying to tell me 5 or 6 years ago.
I love that you can, yeah, it's almost like this no egos, like check your ego at the door or leave your ego outside of this group message so that we can have a benefit here. Like there's something that's going to benefit both of us or all of us involved in this chat. And I think that was going to be one of my questions about what you've learned along the way to build this safe space.
Yeah.
And clearly things like that, like your Sunday gatherings, like it's Sunday dinner, it's family dinner.
Yeah.
We're a family. You mentioned we talked the other day about this too, how you incorporate guys and their significant others and they realize that it's not the work over the significant other or the spouse or the family, it's you're a part of it and this is just a part of who I am too.
Yeah. And so that's big time. I mean, 100% at the end of the day, it's like you said, like your wife is the one that hears, after your long day, it's like that, or, your mom or your dad or your brother or your best friend. And so I think having that support group is key, especially because you can't do it alone. No. It's like on the pitch, you have 11 on the pitch, and then you have your bench, and then you have the support staff and the technical staff, and so it's you can't do it alone, and that's one big thing. Obviously, that I've known and I've gotten to understand is to be able to also delegate, right, and help people get better, because at the end of the day, it's like this saying is like the best leaders develop new leaders, and so I think that ties into what you're saying too.
So we've got to head out in a second. I want to touch on some of the things that I want to pull out of you here. So really talk about this sacrifice, this struggle, this kind of drive forward. So where are you headed? Where do you want to go? Where do you see yourself? So we're going to finish the A license here in January, February time. What's next? What's after that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's having goals. I mean, I want to be able to be with, hopefully eventually with a professional club, whether it's with an academy team or with a youth national team. That's a pretty high up on my goals, but it's how am I going to get there? It's doing these things. People say like, oh, well, you don't need a license to know how to coach. It's like, yeah, but a lot of stuff with this, there's a lot of new things that have been incorporated in these licenses. And I'll tell you this, from my C course to the B course, every step has been a big improvement. Now doing this A course has been eye-opening to some things, and I've literally implemented already into the season, which we're doing very well. We're 4-1-1. We're ranked number 8 in the nation. In junior college, obviously, it's all relative, but it's number 8 in the nation. We're doing well. I mean, the lads have really bought in, and we've pushed them pretty hard. But it just goes to show it's there's always stepping stones, right? There's always little steps, and how we can widen that. We talk about that. The motivational gap, how we can make it and put it in increments as to be able to reach the end goal or one of the goals, right? And we talked about that this week. And so for me, it's being able to obviously get through these next few months and do well, but also pick each other's brains. And I think also for the people that are listening, you never know when your next job is and where it's coming from. And so literally I could be, I'm sitting here on your podcast, next thing you know it, you can get signed with the Earthquakes first team, and you get a phone call. It's like that's how simple it is. I mean, there's been jobs offered from these courses, and being able to network and talk to people, and so that's part of it is connecting with people, and not only on the football level, but also on a personal level. And I know for me, I've always connected well with you, and obviously we don't live too far away. It's like 3 hours, and so
little skip down.
Yeah.
So I guess on top of that, this kind of idea of licensing, like we come here, I wouldn't say that we're not at this level. It's not being taught how to coach, but it's so many nuances around coaching that I think we've both taken so many positives from, in terms of how to be a better soccer person, and not just how do I move the X's and O's on the board, but how am I challenging my players individually? How am I, with one of the topics is leading the player.
Yeah.
What do you do with your players? And we'll wrap up with this, I think, is to what's the biggest thing that you feel like you give to your players?
For me, I think one of the things that I've learned, because I am younger and I'm closer to their age, is trying to relate to them on a different level, and still have that, that separations, like, hey, I'm trying to help you type thing, but also getting their trust. That's, for me, it's been the number one thing where I'll go out and actually get to know them. And the best opportunities is when we're on the bus, when team meals, like for example, when we're eating, it's phones away, and staff included. I mean, we try to uphold those same values.
Sure, yeah.
To be able to kind of like walk the walk, right, and set the example. And so things like that is gaining their trust and really interacting with them and telling them and getting to know them, not because it's going to help us, but because that's what our values are. We want to get to know our players, because then what I've learned is when you get to know your players and they trust you, now when you're asking them to do something, or you're giving them information, they're more inclined and to be able to receive that. They're more receptive to that information, and now it's not coming from a bad place, right? We talk it from a safe place. So there's times where you're gonna dig into the players, but those are some things that we've done, team building activities where just on this bus, our first bus ride, we had the guys improv on a story. And one person started it, and it was kind of like a domino effect, and the next person had to add to it, and next thing you know it, I mean, the guys are just getting after me and, saying things, but being able just to, it's funny, and they were able to do that because I felt like we as a program had been able to instill that trust that, hey, what's happened here is we're a family, and we can be that way, and it makes
awesome.
These things more.
I'm always so interested in this developing a culture, and what would people say about you looking in, or someone that's left your program and looking in. And I think it would be a safe place, it would be a good place to be, and I think that's something that we all want to be a part of. So if you're looking for an assistant and I'm in Fresno, I'm all yours.
There you go. Thanks, Denny. And vice versa, No, I'm really grateful. I mean, again, like I said, when you told me you had a podcast, I was like, dude, I really want to get on, and this has been a great experience, and I hope to be able to get asked to get on this, or if I tell you, like, hey, Daddy, put me on your podcast.
We'll get another one on there for sure, mate.
All right.
Class. Eddie, thank you, man.
Thanks.
So there it is. It's a real quick and short chat with Edison there, but so much cool stuff from his own experience, and how he's all about the player, and he's all about that relationship that helps you to create this environment that just pushes for success. As he said, right now they're sitting at number 8 in the nation in his junior college, and he's very humble about that, but I think it's fully deserved just based on the conversation there, just that 20 minutes that you heard. So definitely catch up with Eddie. He's an Instagram guy. He is Eddie_G711. He's not so much of a Twitter guy, so I'll do all the tweets for him, and then he can do all the Instagram stuff. So we're a great combo if you check in on us. But a huge thank you to Eddie for his time, and that was recorded as a little breakout on the A license. So if you can get into any coaching license, if you can follow that pathway and take it, especially in Kansas City, where it's just so positive, and the facility itself is phenomenal, and you can do things like that, where Eddie and I just took out 20 minutes and had an in-depth conversation before learning about analyzing the game and analyzing the individual within the game. So that's all kind of part of our recent experience. But again, check in on Eddie G711 on Instagram. Keep up to date with him, and always follow me at LeeDunneSoccer. And then my final thing, as always, is a thanks to Tactical Pad. Their gifts are brilliant. You just constantly use them in showing your players what you're doing. And I've got to the stage now where I tend to use a lot of the same activity, when then I can work on both sides of the ball, so whether I'm working in attack or defense. But I use that because it's a constant reminder, and it gives ways around problems, so we may find a certain pattern in a certain phase of play. So definitely get onto Tactical Pad. You can find out more on LeeDunneSoccer.com. As always, at LeeDunneSoccer on Twitter and Instagram, and more coming very soon. Thank you.